Hey guys, welcome back. So with getting back into Heroes Reborn, and this time around talking about number 6, which focuses on Zarda, the Power Princess, and with us now getting her origin slash backstory, this now completes all the different breakdowns for the different members of the Squadron Supreme of America within this reality. But on top of just seeing the history of these characters, we also get to take on their opinion when confronted with the idea of this reality being false, and in the case of Zarda, I find her entitlement very interesting. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so when we jump in with issue 6, it picks up with the fight that we had seen in issue 1 between Zarda the Power Princess and the unstoppable Allgog, or better yet, the final Allfather, destroyer of Asgard, the unstoppable Allgog, the Eater of Gods, which is a long name slash title slash multiple titles to put together, but to be honest, if Marvel went back and told his story, I would love to see it, because when we jump into Heroes Reborn number 6 and we see more of him fighting against Zarda, Allgog talks about how he ate Odin and how Odin tasted like beard and soured mead, and the one with pretty horns and black magic who he ate as well, which sounds like Heimdall, but consuming that one in particular gave him the squirts, which is a bit of TMI. But then he also expresses that everyone else on Asgard practically tasted like nothing, which then has him curious for how the utopian princess will taste, which he finds out very quickly when he nearly consumes her, and he describes her as soft and sweet just like any other princess. But in the case of Zarda, who's the last of her sisters from Utopia Isle, and we found out the how and why to all of that in the Magneto and the Mutant Force one-shot. But it's here where Zarda tells Allgog that the women of Utopia Isle, they were like no other. They could drink any creature under the table, and depending on how drunk they were, they'd either smash that creature with the table or smash them into the table after. But then it's here where she tells Allgog, after being spewed out of his mouth, that she left something behind inside of him, which was one of her gauntlets made of utopian Uru, which are bound to her soul with unbreakable astral chains. And as soon as she says this, she yanks that gauntlet that she left in him back, spilling his insides all on the outside. But then following her match with Allgog, just after she defeats him, it's here where we then follow her back to what's her new home since she left Utopia Isle, which now is the Statue of Liberty, to where the statue and the island she's pretty much turned into her own citadel. But on top of that, it's here we find out that the Utopians not only forged their own Uru metal, or their own version of Uru metal, but also they knew the ancient secret of turning flesh into stone, which is precisely what Zarda had did to Allgog after defeating him, to where she then added him to her collection here at the Statue of Liberty. And amongst her collection, there are many others who she's defeated, like Janet Van Dyne and Tigra, who Tigra, by the way, could have been utilized a lot more, especially with the Zarda Power Princess Wonder Woman parody we got going here, because Tigra's like your clearest, closest character to Cheetah in the Marvel Universe, with her first getting a suit that gave her cat-like powers, only to later have her powers permanent when she was bonded to the cat people through an ancient spell. And I feel like we talked about the cat people a while back when we were getting into the weird history of Morbius and his journeys throughout the multiverse, but just the idea of Tigress and her history just being mentioned in this Power Princess story, it just has me thinking of how that could have went if Jason Aaron had decided to go deeper into that idea, either in this story or another one-shot. And if it was a one-shot, I'm sure it'd be a different writer, but with the groundwork that Jason Aaron has laid here, people could dig back into this for years. But also among Zarda's collection, we get the mention of Null, the King in Black, who Zarda had defeated at some point in time, and is mentioned very casually, as if it was light work for her, which we know is mainly because Mephisto had made the Squadron Supreme of America so OP. But in the case of Princess Zarda, this is also created for her a few issues, because in her case, with the history that she was given, she was the first of her race of ancient superwomen to permanently leave Utopia Isle. And when she entered the world of men, she was lured with the promise of something that she couldn't get on Utopia Isle, which was the fruits of war. And within this version of Zarda, she constantly hungers for the next war. But this craving and also her relationship with Hyperion, these are things that we had seen back in Avengers issue 18 when Phil Coulson had originally created these heroes' backgrounds. To where at the time Phil Coulson had also designed these two to more or less be America's power couple, which was also a very New 52 Superman and Wonder Woman type of thing. But in this case, Phil Coulson was less love, more lust. But in this issue, we also find out that Zarda, she's much like the Zarda we've always known, because at the end of the day, she's gonna do what she wants to do. And much like the other members of the Squadron Supreme of America, there's also this part of Zarda that deviates from the script, and we see some of that as she thinks back on her fling with Namor, and I'm sure Phil Coulson is somewhere like, I can't make this up. But also with Zarda desiring a war or some type of conflict, she then thinks back to the civil war that had taken place within this reality, which is a war that had brewed up between Nighthawk and Hyperion, with Nighthawk having feelings for Princess Zarda and that fueling the conflict. And at this point in time, Zarda just thinks over the idea of stirring something back up by just using that, or perhaps initiating another War of the Realms. But in the middle of Zarda brainstorming like how to start something, she hears a huge crackle of thunder, and when she hears it, she knows that it's not just any regular thunder. Like, she recognizes that it's a god's cry. And so to find out what it is, she goes out to her statue garden, she wakes up Hercules, and she binds him with a chain of veracity, demanding that he tells her what he hears or what exactly this thunder means. Because to Zarda's knowledge, Hercules is one of the last gods remaining. But Hercules, he doesn't give up any information, he just laughs hysterically. So then Zarda just turns him back into stone, and she goes from there to investigate what this was on her own. And this leads her to her armory to retrieve an axe that she had forged from the pieces of the broken Rainbow Bridge, which had been shattered with the destruction of Asgard when Mangog became Allgog, which is also when the Ragnarok Wars began. But with her taking this axe, which is called the Rainbow Axe, and I think Zarda could have been a little more creative with that part, but hey, it looks good and it's functional. But with her taking the Rainbow Axe and opening the Bifrost, she makes her way back to Asgard, because with her believing this sound to be the cry of a god, or perhaps even a ghost, she investigates Asgard first, with her considering it to be pretty much a graveyard. But it's when she gets here that she also finds a stranger who's wandering around with great hair and terrible clothing. And when she sees him, there's like this object like whirling around him super quick, and at the speed that it's going, it's too fast for her to identify. And when she asks this guy who he is, who we know to be Thor, like, she doesn't initially pick it up that it is him, because in this world there had been old myths of the son of Odin. They had said that many years ago that he had disappeared from Asgard, and ever since there was no sign of him. So even with seeing him and knowing of him, she's not aware of who he is. But when Thor sees the axe that Princess Zarda is holding, he immediately recognizes that it's made from pieces of the Bifrost. So by just seeing Zarda with the axe, he sees her as a threat, which then causes Zarda to go at Thor, because she had been hoping to find a fight anyway. But when she throws the rainbow axe, it's deflected by this object that's just been whirling around Thor this whole time. But also with her coming for him so aggressively, and not to mention with the rainbow axe, Thor initially believes that she had caused all this destruction on Asgard. But even with Thor zoning her with the lightning as she's coming at him, she still doesn't know who he is, because once again, the most that she's heard is that there was a missing son of Odin, but to her that's only like a forgotten Norse myth. But with her coming for Thor, like right here, I couldn't help but think of death metal, because when she gets close enough, she impales him with her invisible sword, and it very much makes me think of death metal and King in Black, actually, like both at the same time here. But while Zarda is fighting with Thor, she tells him like what actually happened to Asgard, with filling him in about the unstoppable Allgog, and how the Asgardians destroyed each other, while Allgog only grew stronger and he had just taken them out. But even with her saying this, Thor's not really convinced that she didn't do it, so he then pushes her back with the Hurricane Breath, which is like your throwback Journey into Mystery Thor kind of deep cut, because it's not really a move that Thor uses that often in recent years, but nonetheless to this day it's still very effective. And with this happening, Zarda's kind of thinking like, okay, who is this guy who calls for lightning, he exhales hurricanes, his blood smells like booze, and he's got some kind of object wisping around that's even too fast for Zarda's super eyes to identify. And with seeing this, Zarda, she figures out that okay, this guy is clearly a god, but it makes her come at him even harder because she feels a bit threatened, and because of that she hits him hard and she tells him that nobody missed the gods because of me, because in this world she defeated Gore the God Butcher, she ended the Phoenix Saga, she stopped the Hulk when he came back from Sakaar, she fought all the Celestials, and because of her history in this world, she believes that after these hundreds of years that she's earned the right to be who she is, and she deserves to be worshipped. And it's right then when Mjolnir goes upside her head and Thor catches it, remembering who he is. And when this happens, he goes back to your classic clean-shaved Jack Kirby Thor, and he tells her, I remember everything. This is Mjolnir, I'm its master, I'm the blood son of Allfather Odin. And he goes on to say that even though the gods are gone from this maddened reality, the mighty Thor was always more than just a god. And he tells her that he remembers everything, and with leaving, he tells her that he remembers the Avengers. But then after this, Princess Zarda, she then goes to meet with the Squadron Supreme, and she tells him about this stranger that she faced off with who calls himself Thor, and she tells the squadron that she punched him so hard that his beard came off. So you can tell right off the bat, this is one of those let you tell it type situations. But with her filling in the Squadron Supreme of America about what had happened, she couldn't get the last words of Thor out of her head, and it's here with meeting with the squadron that she asked them, have any of them ever heard of beings called the Avengers? But then it's after the story to where for Thor, we then get his perspective from viewing this world for countless centuries. And even though he spent all that time drunk and surprisingly without alcohol poisoning, like that's the real superpower here, like who you kidding? But with him now looking back with his sober mind, he starts to remember a lot of things, like Zarda's first hunt from a child, slaying Vikings in Iceland, where she had her first kill, and even throughout to World War II, where she fought alongside the US and slayed Hitler. But throughout all this time for Thor, for some reason, this drinking horn, which we had seen in a previous issue turn into Mjolnir, like all these years, his drinking horn would never go dry. Like there was always mead for him to drink, and to keep him drunk and out the way. And what's crazy is that in this world, when Gorr the God Butcher set off the God Bomb, Thor felt it. But with the story playing out here, very different than what it did back in Thor God of Thunder, Princess Zarda stopped Gorr, stopped the God Bomb, and not with 2 Mjolnirs, but with her bare hands. And trust me, you're not the only one who's seen this and was just like, come on, man. But in this case, Jason Aaron, he can do it to his own story. Like, he gives himself a pass. But as the story goes in this reality, instead of having your 3 different Thors, you had your 3 versions of Zarda who had taken the Necro Sword, turned it into the Necro Lasso. But with Thor seeing this, he remembers how it truly happened, and he recognizes that this was supposed to be the different versions of him across the timeline, because the battle with Gorr, that was his fight. But also, that's one of the things with Zarda, like in this world, your Princess Zarda, because for her, over these hundreds of years, she believes that she's fought and earned who she is to this day. But the truth is, she's been living in cheat mode her whole life. And with coming to this realization, Thor is pissed, and thunder and lightning are just crack-a-lacking everywhere. And with this happening, it gets the attention of Maya Lopez, the new Phoenix, and she approaches Thor like, let me guess, the world's not exactly the way you remember it. And it's here where she tells Thor that her and her friends can help. But then also with seeing this, like I can't help but think like when Thor joins Blade and Maya and T'Challa and Cap, and I could just imagine there being a moment where Blade is like, oh, when I asked you, you couldn't come, but when Maya come through, and all of a sudden you like Avengers Assemble, or just something petty like that. But I get it, we know Thor was drunk then, he was kind of losing it in Norway, but he's back now, so we know that everything's all good. And who knows, there could also be like a underlining Phoenix family thing going on, like who knows. But so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.